喂，测试。How's everyone today? Pretty good? It's a very hot day today. I was wondering, I think it was yesterday, it was supposed to be 36 degrees, but today feels hotter than yesterday. I think maybe because the sun is out more. So anyhow, when it's a hot day, I'm happy that, I don't know about all of you, I know that most of you are probably very careful about this, but it's nice. I told you, I think last time, that I was very happy that the government, Taiwan government, said that when you drive a bicycle, ride a bicycle or a motorcycle, you do not have to wear a mask anymore. So I've been riding without a mask, which is very nice in this weather. But it's funny, whenever I drive around, I look at everybody else, and everyone else is wearing a mask. So I feel like a real rebel, real individual. But little by little, I've noticed more and more people are not wearing masks when they're walking or exercising or riding their bicycles or their motorcycles. But I think my guess is about 98% of people are still wearing their masks. So anyhow, I know it's very difficult for my foreign friends, especially my American friends, when they come back from their summer in the United States, they come back to Taiwan and they have to put on their mask again. It's quite difficult because in America right now, nobody is wearing a mask. So I found this article quite interesting because of that. And so I thought we would start with this because, Singapore is a pretty careful country as well. And I think that Taiwan often follows Singapore's example. So I'm kind of curious to see when Singapore does this, it makes me wonder if maybe Taiwan will start to think about this as well. It says here, Singapore to ease indoor masking rules. Now, what does ease mean? What does that mean? Relax. Yeah, so if you say I'm going to ease this rule, or I'm going to ease these restrictions or ease something, it means to relax it, to reduce it, to make it lighter. So why don't we say it together? Ease. Ease. Okay, so they're going to, as you said, we're going to relax indoor masking rules, which I find quite interesting because, obviously, even in Taiwan, as I said, most people outside are still wearing a mask, but indoors now, they're relaxing these rules. So it says here, case by case, if there is another COVID-19 case surge, the government would assess the wave's nature before implementing new regulations, a senior official said. So assess, what's another word for assess? Evaluate, yes. To evaluate means to look at something, to assess. Thank you. So if you're going to assess something, in school, what is our most common kind of assessment at school? Examinations, right? A test is a kind of assessment, okay? So if you want to turn this into a noun, it would be, you would just add a M-E-N-T. It would become assessment, okay? So why don't we say this word together? Assess. Assess. And then as a noun, assessment. Assessment. Okay, so if there's another COVID-19 case surge, and we talked about this word before, surge means what? A rise, yeah, increase, a growth. And we use this word often, as I've said before, it's related to like water. We say the surging waves, hailang, or the surge of water down the river or something like that. So that's the original idea, is this idea of surge, of water that's rising or growing or moving very quickly. But here, of course, it means a rise. And when we say surge, it usually means a pretty significant rise. Not a little bit, but a lot, okay? So, when I think of a flood, 水灾 or whatever, I think of surging water. So why don't we say together, surge? Surge. So if the number of cases surge, it means they grow not by a little, but by a lot. The government's going to evaluate or assess the wave's nature. Now, see here, they use the word wave. So we talk about a wave of cases, just like hailang. A wave's nature. Now, they say to assess the wave's nature. Now, nature, we always say is like, 自然 or whatever, 天然. But 大自然, we say nature. People like to go to nature. But we say here the wave's nature. We could say the nature of the wave. What does that mean? Yeah, it means the pattern or the characteristic. That's a good word. The characteristic or the character of something, right? What is this like? What is it like? So if you say if someone has a very pleasant personality, they're good, Xing is very nice. We say they are very what? Good-natured, right? Good, and usually we write good, G-O-O-D dash, natured with a D. So we say good-natured. He's a very good-natured person. Of course, if someone's the opposite, we would say they're a very bad-natured person. Okay? So good-natured person is someone with a pleasant personality. Maybe they don't get angry very often. They just seem to have a very nice, stable personality. So why don't we say this together? Good-natured. Good-natured. Bad-natured. Bad-natured. Right. So when we, as we were saying earlier, it's the character of something. It could be a wave or it could be a person. What is their nature? Okay. So they're going to evaluate the wave's nature before implementing, and we've said this word many times. Implement, of course, means to put into action new regulations. Okay. So anyhow, let's go ahead and read the article. It says Singapore is to lift rules on indoor masking in most venues and ease quarantines for travelers who are not vaccinated against COVID-19 as the country scraps some of its last pandemic era curbs after virus case numbers dropped. Okay, so there's a few words. Most of these words we've looked at before. Let's review them. So it's is to. Okay, when we say is to, it means that they are going to. It's another way of saying they're going to. When we say it is to lift rules on indoor masking in most venues. What's a venue? Yeah, it's a place. You know, it's a simple way of saying a place, a location, a place. Okay, like for example, we could say that the library, this National Library, is a wonderful venue for studying English or reading books or relaxing. It's a very beautiful venue. We could say that. So why don't we say together venues? Venues. Okay, so they're going to lift indoor masking in most venues, most places, and ease. Okay, there's that word ease quarantines. Of course, quarantine we've talked about many times in the last 2.5 years. It's like a 隔离, right? Quarantine. But why don't we say it together? Quarantines. Quarantines. Okay, so they're going to ease or relax quarantines for travelers who are not vaccinated. Okay, so that's kind of significant too. If they're not vaccinated, that's okay. You don't have to quarantine against COVID-19. As the country scraps. Okay, now this is a word, it's a very common word, but to be honest, I don't even know if we've ever talked about this. As a verb, a 动词, what does to scrap mean? To remove, repeal, to throw away. So basically, scrap as a noun, what is it? If you use this as a word as a noun, what does scrap mean? Could be, but it just means generally 垃圾, junk, garbage, rubbish. Okay, so I'll tell you where I see this word a lot. In any place, including Taiwan, we have a place called a scrap yard, Y-A-R-D. Scrap yard is like a junkyard. Yeah, but you know where when I think of a scrap yard, usually I think of a place where there's lots of old cars. You know, they throw away cars, they just pile them up there, and then eventually they crush them, and then they recycle the cars. So we call that a scrap yard or a junk yard, J-U-N-K, junk yard, scrap yard, same idea. So a scrap, like he said, it could be a piece of paper, but I think of rubbish, I think of garbage. But you wouldn't say, you could say this actually. Sometimes, when you have, I'll give you an example. Every week I go and eat at my favorite 自助餐, my cafeteria restaurant. And after you finish eating, there's a place there for your food scraps, okay? It's if you have any remaining food, you throw it in the special bucket for food scraps. And we use that word, we say food scraps. Basically, it means food that you're going to throw away. It's not leftovers. Leftovers are usually things that you would eat, right? So if I say I'm going to eat my leftovers, I know that many of you, including myself, we enjoy eating leftovers. Well, maybe not enjoy them, but we do eat them. So why don't we say together, leftovers? Leftovers. Okay, and that's one word. Now, of course, as you can see, it means left over, right? Means it's still there. leftovers are things that you don't throw away. Leftovers are things you put in your refrigerator, your 冰箱, and you eat them later, or you take them home and you eat them later. And so, but if it's a food scraps, if they're food scraps, then we would throw them away. We don't say, oh, I'm eating my food scraps. If you do, you're probably very, very, maybe you don't have any money or something. So yeah, so why don't we say together, scraps. Scraps. Okay, left. What? Cut. C-U-T? I don't think we would say cut your scraps. We might say reduce your scraps, but I don't know. I think it means reduce your waste. You know, I don't hear that phrase too often, cut your scraps. No, I think you're thinking of cut the crap. Crap. C-R-A-P. Crap means, like 大便. So if you say cut the crap, it means stop talking. Yeah, it says don't talk nonsense. Yeah. But that's probably not the most polite thing to say. If someone was talking to you and you were very angry, you might say cut, C-U-T, Jian, cut the crap, C-R-A-P. But that's not something you would say in a polite situation. Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm. Slop, yeah. So slop is very similar to what I just described. S-L-O-P, slop. Slop is also food scraps. But slop, it's funny, when I think of slop, I usually think of it's very wet, liquid, I'll tell you what, I always hear the word slop. We say pig slop. You take this and you feed it to the pigs. Pigs, they'll eat anything, right? And so that, in fact, I think that's what they do in Taiwan, some places. They take the leftover food, the food scraps, and they put them in a bucket and they feed it to the pigs. And we call that food, that waste food waste that we give to the pigs, we call that pig slop. S-L-O-P, okay? So, if we say S-L, pig slop, just write that down. Now, of course, related to that word is the word sloppy, right? What does sloppy mean? Sloppy means messy, okay? If someone says that person is a very sloppy person or they're very messy person, it could mean that they're actually physically messy. They have a lot, they're dirty or they're disorganized, but it could also mean they're very mama hoo-hoo about stuff. They're very they don't do things very, very well. You can say he did a very sloppy job on his homework, 功课. It doesn't mean it's actually messy, but it just means he did not do he wasn't paying attention. So sloppy, comes from the word slop, which means like 垃圾, but it's a specific kind of 垃圾, like the kind you would give to pigs or food waste. So yeah. So why don't we say together, slop, slop, sloppy, sloppy. Okay. So as the country scraps, and of course, again, scrap here is a 动词. They're throwing away. They're discarding. They're scrapping some of its last pandemic era. Okay. Era, of course, means 时代, right? Era, a time. Pandemic time. Curbs. We've talked about this word many times. What's another word for curb? Well, it would be, more like a restriction. 限制. Okay. Like a limit, L-I-M-I-T, limit, a curb. Actually, limit, I think, is the best word. So you can say there are curbs on what he can do, or there's curbs on these laws curb our behavior. Okay, so curb can be a 名词 or a 动词. So we just like limit, L-I-M-I-T, can be a 名词 or a 动词. We can say I'm going to limit what he does. I'm going to curb what he does. So here it's a 名词, pandemic era limits or curbs after virus case numbers dropped. Okay, so this is what they're doing. Let's go ahead and read this then. Singapore is to lift rules on indoor masking. in most venues and ease quarantines for travelers. Sorry, let me pull that up. Who are not vaccinated against COVID-19 as the country scraps some of its last pandemic era curbs. Let's say that again. Pandemic era curbs. After virus case numbers dropped. Okay. So let's go on. It says masks in indoor settings would no longer be mandatory from Monday, except for certain areas such as public transportation and healthcare facilities, including hospitals and nursing homes, the Singaporean Ministry of Health said yesterday. Okay, so what is a nursing home? Okay, yeah, it's well, you know what a nurse is, right? What is it? Who should, right? A nurse, right? So a nursing home is a special home to take care of elderly people, old people, senior citizens, to help them live when they cannot take care of themselves. Now, I think I've had this conversation recently with several people, but in America we have two kinds of facilities. We have nursing homes, but we also have, we call them retirement homes. Or sometimes we say retirement communities. Okay? And a retirement community is not a place, it's not a nursing home. Well, it could have a nursing facility inside the community, but it's not a place, it's a place where you live, most people live independently, but they're in a special community or a special home. And a nursing home is usually for people who are a little bit more unable or they need more assistance. They have someone to help them. So in America, this is very common. I was having this conversation because we were comparing Taiwan to the United States. And in Taiwan, I find that many, not all of course, but many senior citizens, let me write that down too because that's a good word. It's considered a little bit more polite to say senior citizens. We don't say old people. That doesn't sound good. We say senior citizens. That's more of a common word or expression. You could say the elderly. Yeah, you could say the elderly, but usually we say elderly, of course, can be a 形容词 or it can be a noun, means. So you can say the elderly. This is a place for the. We say the word the means then it's a 名词. But if we say he is elderly, that means, of course, a 形容词, he is older, old. Okay, so retirement in America, most, not all, again, senior citizens, they like to live independently. They don't want someone to help them. They don't want their kids to take care of them. But in Taiwan, it's very, many senior citizens live with their adult children or, something like that. Of course, now in Taiwan, I see many senior citizens have somebody from, Dongnanya, Southeast Asia, taking care of them or living with them to help them. But in America, we have these retirement homes. And I've talked to many senior citizens, including my parents, who said, I don't want to rely on my children. They don't want their kids to take care of them. They want to live independently. This is very American culturally. So they go to a retirement home or retirement community, and there they have their own life. They're still independent mostly. And then if they get a little bit older and they need care, then the retirement community or home will have a nursing facility inside the retirement community to help them. Now, of course, if someone has more serious condition, like maybe they had a stroke or heart attack or something, they might go directly to a retirement home. So anyhow, that's a long explanation. Let's read this together. Nursing homes. Nursing homes. Retirement homes. Retirement homes. Retirement communities. Communities. Of course, retire means to 退休, right? Okay, and then this one, elderly. Elderly. Senior citizens. Senior citizens. Right, so in Taiwan and the US and many other places, there's always a senior citizen discount, right? If you ride a bus or you go to a movie or whatever, there's usually a senior citizen discount. We don't say old people discount or elderly, we say senior citizen discount. So yeah, that's just remember that. Okay, so basically they said here in this article that, let's go back to the top, it says mass and indoor settings. Now setting is another word for simply an environment, 环境. Okay, you can say, what was the setting for this situation? What was the setting like? It means, what was the environment like? Now, we could talk about the setting of a movie. You know, if you watch a 电影 and the setting was very scary or it was very beautiful or something. But we can also say the setting of this room. What's it feel like? What's it like? Okay, a very bright setting. So when I describe a restaurant, in my magazine, I often describe the setting. What does it look like? What does it feel like? So basically, it's another word for environment, 环境. So why don't we say together, settings. Settings. So mask and indoor settings, inside, would no longer be mandatory. And we've learned this word before. Mandatory means what? Yeah, it means you have to, right? We talk about Taiwan has mandatory education until what? Junior high school, right? Okay, or is it senior high school? I think it's still 国中, right? Through junior high school, everyone has to go to school. It's mandatory. It's not like you can say, I don't want to go to school. You have to go to school. And then, or Taiwan has some mandatory military service. We talk about 当兵, right? So it's mandatory right now, 4 months, right? Of course, that's not enough. I think it needs to be 1 year at least. That's my campaign right now. Is everyone should do at least 1 year of military service, mandatory military service. Okay, so let's say this word together: mandatory. Mandatory. Yeah, I'll tell you a little story. About 3 days ago, I had dinner with a restaurant owner in Taichung, and he's not from Taiwan. He came down. He has 3 restaurants in Taiwan, but he's from Israel. And he's lived in Taiwan a long time. And we were comparing Israel to Taiwan. And Israel, all men have to do 2 years of mandatory military service. And all women have to do 1 year, I think, of mandatory military service. But he loves Taiwan. He was like, if anything happens to Taiwan, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to fight. He's already fought. He told me he already fought. He's a little bit older, but he said he already fought in a war in Israel. He's already fought before for Israel. So he said he would fight for Taiwan. So anyhow, one more time, mandatory. Okay, so these would no longer be mandatory, okay, from Monday, except for certain areas like or such as public transportation, so that's buses or trains or whatever, and healthcare facilities. So a healthcare facility could be a hospital, it could be a nursing home, and other places. Okay, so I want to just ask you here, if something is not mandatory, what's the word we often use if we say, well, this is not mandatory, it is what? Yes, optional. So if someone says, well, this is not mandatory, it's optional. What does an option mean? Choice, right? You say you have many options when you go to that restaurant. You can order Italian food, you can order Chinese food, you can order Japanese food. There are many options, or there are many dishes, many choices, right? So if you say something is optional, it means that you can do it or you don't have to do it. You can do whatever you want. You have that choice. Okay, so why don't we say together, option, option, optional, optional. Right. So that would be kind of like the opposite of mandatory. Mandatory, of course, means you don't have a choice. You have to do something. Okay. When you buy a car, a new car, you have the car comes with many options, right? You say, well, I want this color and I want these kind of wheels and I want the sunroof and there's many options you have with a car. You can choose things to have things or not have certain things. Okay. So let's read this together. Masks in indoor settings would no longer be mandatory. Mandatory from Monday, except for certain areas, such as public transportation and healthcare facilities. Including hospitals and nursing homes. The Singaporean Ministry of Health said yesterday. Okay, let's say it's Singaporean. Yeah, okay. Of course, what was I going to look at here? There was something here. No, I don't know. I guess it was nothing. Okay, so let's go on. It says mask wearing on private transportation modes, as well as school buses and taxis, would be optional. There we go. There's the word. I didn't know that. Would be optional, it said in a statement, confirming an announcement by Singaporean Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong in his annual National Day rally speech on Sunday. Okay, good. So we're using that word. So mask wearing on private transport. Now, we just talked about public transportation, which of course is like a train or a bus or whatever, where everyone's together. But here it says mask wearing on private transportation modes. Now, mode, I don't know if we've learned this before, but what's a mode? It's kind of hard to describe, but it's simple, right? You could say like a style. It could be a kind or type, or it could be a setting, SETTENG. I'll tell you where I used to see mode a lot, right? When you had a stereo, like your 音响 at home, right? And you could pick what mode you wanted to use, your tape, or you want to use your video, or you want to use your, what else? Your CD. And there's modes. You can pick your mode. Which mode do you want to use? It means which option do you want to choose? So mode is like a choice, an option, a setting, and it's not a word we use as much as option, but we could use it. So transportation mode would be, we could say a mode of transportation. So that basically means a kind or type of transportation. So what would be some private transportation modes? Well, what? A car. Okay, what else? Taxi. Yeah, I guess taxi is a private. Yeah, I guess it's not public. Bicycle. Yeah, U-bike. Could be your own motorcycle. Those are all modes of transportation. Okay, so why don't we say the word mode? Mode. Okay, so private transportation modes, as well as, actually the way here, because they say as well as, seems to indicate that taxis and school buses are not considered private transportation. They separate those two because they say as well as. It means in addition to, okay, as well as school buses and taxis. So I guess they're slightly different. A school bus is not really public transportation, but it's a bunch of people together. Taxis, of course, you're with stranger, but it's not public transportation in a way. So anyhow, would be optional. So there's that word. It said in a statement, confirming. Okay, so this confirms something that their prime minister announced. Okay, at his National Day rally. So their National Day was like Taiwan has a 双十节. This is their National Day rally. Now, of course, rally, as we've said before, is like a gathering, right? A big gathering. Like I'm sure here between now and the end of the year, you're going to see more and more political rallies because of the 选举, the election coming up. at the end of the year. So it's a big gathering. Okay, so let's read this. Mask wearing on private transportation modes as well as school buses and taxis would be optional. It said in a statement confirming an announcement by Singaporean Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong in his annual National Day rally speech on Sunday. Okay, what does annual mean? Yearly, right, every year. So we have Taiwan, we have many annual holidays, once a year, okay? If it's biannual, if you add a BI at the front, biannual means what? Actually, twice a year, very good. Every 2 years is slightly different. I'll write that down to you. Actually, this is funny because I don't think many native English speakers, biannual means twice a year, but biennial means every 2 years. Yeah, they're very similar. Bi-weekly means twice. I think bi-weekly means twice a week. It's a good question, but I think it's twice a week, bi-weekly. It could be. But I know this is biennial means every 2 years, and biannual, yeah. Twice a year is biannual. And this means every 2 years. So biennial. Why don't we say it together? Biannual. Biannual. Biennial. Biennial. Right. Anyhow, probably not words you're going to use very often, but so yeah, annual is much more common. Okay, so that's a photo caption. Let's read this together then. Oh, sorry, I'll read this. We are in a much better position, but we certainly do not feel it is appropriate for us to throw caution to the wind and remove all our measures, Singaporean Minister of Finance Lawrence Wong said yesterday. Okay, so there's a funny expression here. He says, we are in a much better position. Okay, if you say I'm in a better position, what does that mean? I'm in a better situation, right? You could say right now we're in a very good position. Right now our company is in a very good position. It means we're in a good situation. Our 情况 is good. But we certainly do not feel it is appropriate, it is right, it is the right time or is appropriate for us to throw caution to the wind. What does that mean? That's a very good expression. It's very common too. Well, first of all, what is caution? It's a 名词, right? And caution means to be careful, to take care, right? It could be, or just to be careful. So from the word caution, we get the word cautious, right? C-A-U-T-I-O-U-S, cautious. If someone is very cautious, they're very careful, right? You can say, please be, he's very cautious about trying something new or trying new food, or he's very cautious about traveling. He's very careful. Okay, so caution is the noun. But if you throw caution, it's, 丢, right? Throw caution to the wind, it means it's like almost like taking caution and throwing it away. What would that mean then? Yeah, let it go. It means I don't worry about it. I don't care or worry about it. I just 随便, I'll just go ahead and do it. So it usually means that if there is some sort of danger, there is some sort of 风险 or risk, but you go ahead and do it anyhow. You still do it. So you can say he threw caution to the wind and, jumped off the cliff. I don't know. But yeah, basically it means there's danger or there's risk, but you still go ahead and do it. You basically say, I don't care. 随便, I'm going to do it. So why don't we say that together? This is actually a very common expression. Throw caution to the wind. Throw caution to the wind. Right. So they don't feel it's appropriate, even though things are getting better. They don't feel it's the right time to just open everything up, throw caution to the wind, and remove all of our measures. So they're doing some, but they're not doing all. Okay. Okay, so let's read this. We are in a much better position. But we certainly do not feel it is appropriate for us to throw caution to the wind and remove all our measures. Singaporean Minister of Finance, Lawrence Wong said yesterday. Okay. So here it says, even if there is another surge in cases, the government would first study the nature of the wave before deciding whether new steps need to be implemented, he said. Okay, so this is like the first introduction we read. Let's read this together. Even if there is another surge in cases, the government would first study the nature of the wave before deciding whether new steps need to be implemented. He said. Right. Okay. So it says here, countries across the world, including some that previously had strict containment policies, such as Australia, have been loath to reimpose mask mandates, even amid a resurgence in cases, while Thailand, a key tourist hub, ended them in June. Okay, so there's some good words here. It says countries across the world, including some that previously had strict containment policies, such as Australia. So yeah, Australia, they had very strict containment. Now, what's containment? Well, first of all, what does contain mean? You know what? To restrict, to limit. Now, of course, to contain something, you can say this cup contains water, right? It holds water. But if you also contain as a 动词, can also mean to limit, 限制 something. Okay. For example, these walls contain us inside this room. They keep us inside this room. Okay. So containment becomes a 形容词. Containment policies. It means a policy, a 政策 to contain something. And what are we containing here? We're restricting, we're limiting what? The virus, yeah. I mean, I guess we could say we're also restricting people, but most importantly, we're restricting or limiting the spread of the 病毒, the virus. Okay, so they had strict containment policies. Okay, let's say it together. Containment. Okay, so even countries that had this previously, of course, we say before had strict containment policies, have been loath to reimpose mask mandates. Now, first of all, let's look. Remember we talked about the word mandatory, right? So here we have the word mandate, which looks a little bit similar. A mandate is what? A what? A order. You say order? Yeah, it's like an order, it's like a law, it's like a, we say 命令, right? It's like a rule, a mandate, okay? A law. So let's say together, mandates. Mandates. Okay, so that we know, mask rules, mask laws, whatever. Okay, so here it says, these countries have been loath to reimpose mask mandates. Okay, to reimpose, we talked about the word impose before, right? We impose a law. We say, you must do this. We impose a restriction. We impose a rule. When we say someone must do something, we impose it upon them. We force them to do it. They have to follow it. It's mandatory. So to reimpose, of course, means to impose again, right? To do it again, to reimpose. So, but this is a very good word, loathe, okay? What does that mean? To hate, yeah. To be, unwilling, to be hate, to not want to do something. So if you say, I am loath to, I don't know, eat out, or I'm loath to go back to my old school. I don't know. There's many things we could be loath to do. But basically we say loath to do something means we are very, very, we really, really don't want to do it. And so have you heard the term fear? I think we talked about this. Fear and loathing. Okay? Loathing. Loathing, fear and loathing means you really hate something. You despise it. You cannot stand it. So if you say, I feel great loathing towards that person or loathing towards that thing, it means I hate it or hate them. Okay? So when you loathe something, it's not like a little bit. It's like you really hate it. Okay? So why don't we say together, loathe. Loathe. Loathing. Loathing. So basically, these countries really do not want to reimpose mask mandates. Once they stopped, they don't want to go back there again. They don't want to do it again. Okay, even amid a resurgence in cases. And we've talked about this word before. What does a resurgence mean? It means to go back up again. Remember, here's the word surge, right? You see the word here? S-U-R-G-E, right? So a resurgence means to go up again, to grow again. You can say there's been resurgence of crime in this country, or resurgence of, I don't know, interest. We could even say there's been a resurgence in interest in something, right? Maybe for a while something was not very popular, or people lost their interest, but now you can say there's been a resurgence in interest in, I don't know, 80s music. I don't know. So why don't we say together, resurgence. Resurgence. Okay, so basically what this means is that even if cases go up again, some countries do not want to bring in those mask rules again. They don't want to do it. So it says here, while Thailand, a key tourist hub, okay, hub of course means like Zhongxing, a central area, ended their mask mandates in June. Okay. My niece and nephew and their father went to Thailand back in June. Actually, it was right around that time. And they sent me photographs from Mangu, Bangkok, and nobody was wearing masks. So I was like, wow. Okay. Well, actually, I shouldn't say it. A few people were in masks, but many people were not wearing masks. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so here, let's read this together. Countries across the world, including some that previously had, let's say it again, previously had strict containment policies such as Australia have been loath to reimpose mask mandates, even amid a resurgence in cases. While Thailand, a key tourist hub, ended them in June. Right. Okay. It says here, Hong Kong, which rivals Singapore as a financial hub, still has universal mask-wearing rules in place and a 3-day travel quarantine. That sounds a little bit more like Taiwan. So Hong Kong, which rivals. Now, of course, rival can be a 动词 or a 名词. If you are a rival, what does that mean? A competitor. Somebody who's like almost like in a 比赛 against you, right? So here it says Hong Kong rivals Singapore as what? They're not a rival as a shopping center or whatever. They're rivals as a financial hub. Basically, both cities want to be a hub for finance, for financial business or financial industry, for banking, basically. Okay, so Hong Kong, which rivals Singapore as a financial hub, okay? So why don't we say the word together, rivals. Rivals. Okay, still has universal mask-wearing rules. Now, of course, you know what the word universe means, but this is actually a good reminder. If we, as a 形容词, if we say something is universal, what does that mean? Yeah, it means everyone. Overall, everyone has to do it, okay? So you could say there is a universal understanding that we should not, I don't know, hurt each other. Or, people could say love is an universal emotion, right? Everybody feels love, I hope. It's sometimes, so universal means everyone shares this. It's almost like everyone in the world. But of course, here we're not talking about everyone in the world. We're talking about everyone in Hong Kong. So we could say still has a universal mask-wearing rules. So everyone has to wear masks and a 3-day travel quarantine. So when, just like Taiwan, when people come back, they have to quarantine for 3 days. Although I think in Hong Kong, it's a little bit more strict. You cannot quarantine at home. You have to quarantine in a hotel, I believe. Although I'm not quite sure on that. Okay, so let's read this. Hong Kong, which rivals Singapore as a financial hub, still has universal mask-wearing rules in place and a 3-day travel quarantine. Quarantine. Right. Okay. Singapore, on the other hand, has seen a surge in the number of visitors after it scrapped most of its pandemic measures, including compulsory masking outdoors and tests for incoming vaccinated travelers. Okay, so now here it says, we've talked about a surge in new cases, surge in new COVID-19 cases, but here, Singapore, on the other hand, now when we say on the other hand, it means on the other side or in an opposite way, or like, almost like saying if we have this and then on the other hand, we have that, right? So you could say, Taipei is a very global city. On the other hand, it's also very crowded and expensive. So we're saying this is good, but, so it's almost like saying but, right? So Singapore, on the other hand, has seen a surge in the number of visitors, not cases, but visitors, after it scrapped. Now here's that word, scrapped most of its pandemic measures. It got rid of it, threw away most of its pandemic measures, including compulsory, okay, that's a hard word to say, compulsory masking outdoors. Now, what's the other word for compulsory? Mandatory, the word we just talked about, right? Compulsory. So we could say in Taiwan, we could say there is compulsory education until you're up through junior high school, until the end of junior high school. So why don't we say together, compulsory. Compulsory. And compulsory comes from the word, and I think we've learned this before, to what? Yeah, sorry, it's getting a little bit crowded here, but to compel. I think that's right. To compel, C-O-M-P-E-L, means C-O-M, if you can't see that, C-O-M-P-E-L, to compel. If you compel someone to do something, it means you force them to do something, okay? So why don't we say together, to compel. To compel. And then once more that word, compulsory. Compulsory. Okay, so they scrapped. They got rid of these, most of their measures, including compulsory masking outdoors and tests for incoming vaccinated travelers. Okay, so yeah, let's read this together. Singapore, on the other hand, has seen a surge in the number of visitors after it scrapped most of its pandemic measures, including compulsory masking outdoors. Let's say it one more time. Compulsory masking outdoors and tests for incoming vaccinated travelers. Vaccinated travelers. Okay. Okay. So here it says, visitors who are not fully vaccinated entering Singapore from 11:59 p.m. on Sunday, very specific, would not need to quarantine, but would need to test negative within 2 days before traveling to the city-state. Okay, so that makes sense. If you test negative 2 days before traveling to Singapore, that's what you need to do. In fact, I had to do that. Taiwan had that rule, but then Taiwan's recently scrapped that rule. Taiwan used to have, up until a month ago or about a month ago, before you came back to Taiwan, you had to test negative PCR, not quick tests, PCR tests, 48 hours before getting on the airplane to come back to Taiwan. And I'll tell you, it was a lot of mafan. I went everywhere in Bingzhou. I called hospitals, I called clinics, I went to pharmacies, and I said, do you give a quick PCR test? 48 hours results. No, sorry, we don't do that. Finally, I found some, I was at a Yaoju, and they said, oh, you can call this lab, laboratory, and you can call them, and they do this for travelers. And so I called them, and they're like, yeah, we can do that. They said it'll cost you 150块美金. I was like, okay. But, I heard that was cheap. Some people paying over 200块美金 for a quick result on a PCR test. And so I was like, no problem, I'll do it. And so, yes, sure enough, I went there, I drove my car, and they come to your window, and they test you, and then they're like, okay, come, we'll call you in about 3 hours. And they called me, and they're like, okay, yeah, you're fine. So then I went back, and I picked, either they can send it to you by email, your results, or you can go pick up a piece of paper. So I was very happy because it was a lot of mafan to get that. But now you don't have to do that. So let's see here. Okay, so let's read this. Visitors who are not fully vaccinated entering Singapore from 11:59 p.m. on Sunday would not need to quarantine, but would need to test negative within 2 days before traveling to the city-state. Okay, now of course, test negative means 阴性, right? Okay, if you are 阳性, how do we say test what? Positive, right? Which is kind of funny because positive usually means good, right? 肯定的. But actually, when here with medicine, with this, positive means you have the virus. Negative means you do not have the virus. Okay, now you might wonder, why do they say city-state? What does that mean? Yeah, it means the state. The country is a city. That's it. Singapore is really just one city. It's not like Taiwan. Taiwan's has many cities. So when we say a city-state, it means that city is a country. That's it. I have many Singaporean friends, so I have to be careful. Yeah, to be honest, I've been to Singapore several times, and I think many foreigners enjoy living there because it's very beautiful. I mean, well, I should say it's clean, it's very orderly, it's very tropical. But I do think they travel a lot for vacation because all my friends have gone to Singapore for vacation. They say after about 4 or 5 days, you've done everything. I don't think that's true. Honestly, I think there's probably more to do in Singapore. I think probably they haven't done everything, but it just feels like after several days, you kind of feel like you've been everywhere and done everything. So I don't know. I do have friends who live there and they've enjoyed it, but I do think they like to travel. And I will say this, my Singaporean friends who have moved to Taiwan, they really seem to enjoy Taiwan. Every day they're going out to different restaurants. They like the food. They love the food in Taiwan, and they like to travel around Taiwan and drive. They get to drive everywhere. And of course, they can drive in Singapore too, but it's expensive to own a car there. So yeah, my feeling is that the Singaporeans who come to Taiwan really enjoy Taiwan because there's just much more to do. There's more to see and do. But yeah, Singapore it's a nice city. It's very, very orderly. Okay, let's see if there's anything else here. I don't think there's too much more here. We can go to a different story, but yeah, I will say this is my opinion, but I do think we need to start relaxing mask rules. To me, it doesn't. I agree in public transportation, it makes sense. Like if you're on a bus, or the Jieyun or whatever, okay, that makes sense. But what doesn't make sense is if you're outside doing anything, just walking. Everyone goes to restaurants, right? When you go to a restaurant in Taiwan or a cafe or anything, what do? You take off your mask, and everybody's eating and drinking and talking with everybody there, and it's no problem usually. So why do you put on a mask when you go outside? It doesn't make sense, on the weekends I'm riding my bicycle and I do not have a mask on, and I still see people in this weather riding a bicycle or jogging with a mask on. It doesn't make sense. I think, take off the mask. You're by yourself. You're outside. Yeah. Anyhow, that's my opinion. So, yeah. Okay. Okay. Whoops. Wrong thing here. Let's go back to another article. Okay, I found this was a very interesting article because I kind of been curious about this. Of course, I think you've all heard about this terrible incident with the policeman in Tainan, right? They got shot and killed, which is kind of shocking because, in Taiwan, that just doesn't usually happen. I mean, that's a very, very unusual case. In the U.S., unfortunately, that kind of situation happens a little bit more. Although it's still unusual. Even in America, it would be very unusual for 2 police officers to be killed, together like that. So I know it's created a lot of discussion. Okay, so but I found this. I saw this and I was kind of thinking about this. It says NCC receives complaints over coverage of shooting. Now, when we say coverage, what are we talking about? Yeah, news coverage, right? Coverage is a 名词 for to cover something. And of course, here we're talking about the media or news, right? So often we say the news coverage of this story is very good or not so good or whatever. It's very fair or not so fair. So why don't we say together coverage? Coverage. Okay, so they're receiving complaints. People are complaining over the news coverage of this shooting. Okay, so let's read this. It says the National Communications Commission, okay, this is the NCC, yesterday reported that it received complaints about the media's coverage of the killing of 2 Tainan police officers, with some saying that suspects' faces should not be blurred on television, which again, it was kind of, I've noticed this and I thought, that's interesting. So some people who are complaining say that suspects, now what's a suspect? This is of course a 名词. What does that mean? Right. So if you go out and steal something from 7-Eleven and the police catch you, until you're found guilty by the court, the 法院, you're still a suspect, right? Because someone has to, in this country and in the US, you have to prove that someone committed a crime, and then they're officially guilty. So before they're officially guilty in a court, they are suspects. Okay? So we say, of course, suspect, you can be used as a verb, 动词. You can say, I suspect that he stole money from me. Or I suspect that he killed that person. So you can suspect somebody. But of course, so again, here's one of those words where the pronunciation, or the accent is a little bit different. Here, as a person, a 名词, we say suspect. So why don't we say it together? Suspect. Suspect. We can say he is a suspect. But if you use it as a 动词, we say to suspect. To suspect. Okay, so I suspect that he did that. Okay, so with saying some people saying that suspects' faces should not be blurred on TV. Now, what is this? Maybe we've never learned this word. What does blur mean? Unclear. So, if you're like me and you wake up in the morning, your eyes are usually very blurry, right? You cannot see, you have to rub your eyes. You're like, oh, I can't, sometimes I wake up and I'm trying to see what time it is in the morning. I'm trying to read my clock because my vision or my eyes are blurry. It means I can't see real clearly. Of course, after you wash your wash your face or wake up a bit, then your eyes, you can see more clearly. So blurry, if you say my vision or my sight is blurry, blurry, it means it's kind of like that, you can't see clearly. So like here it's used as a 动词 to blur something like, so I'm sure you've seen on TV when they show like this kind of person, a suspect, they'll blur their face out so you cannot see their face clearly. Of course, I've noticed they do this for other things like children sometimes on TV. They blur their faces out so they can't see, for some reason. So anyhow, why don't we say together, blur, blurred, blurry, blurry. Yeah. So it's just that idea. You can't see it very clearly. So their faces, these people are saying their faces should not be blurred on television. They should be able to see their faces. Okay. So let's read this together. The National Communications Commission yesterday reported that it received complaints about the media's coverage of the killing of 2 Tainan police officers, with some saying that suspects' faces should not be blurred on television. Okay. So here it says the complaints came after the Tainan City Police Department identified 2 possible suspects, both surnamed Chen, wanted in Monday's shootings, before correctly identifying the wanted man as Lin Xinwu. Okay, so Yeah, so here it says identified 2 possible suspects, both surname. What does surname mean? Well, I think you probably know this. What's a surname? Family name. It's funny because in America, we don't use that term a whole lot, but in Taiwan, we use it a lot. We say, oh, his surname is Chen or Lin or Wu or whatever. But surname, yeah, basically means your last name, your surname. Okay? So why don't we say together, surnamed? Surnamed. Okay, so they identified 2 possible suspects. Okay, again, these are people who are suspected of doing something, wanted in Monday shootings. Okay, I think you've watched a lot of cowboy movies. They used to have these wanted posters. Of course, even in modern times, they still have these wanted posters where it says wanted, for this crime, and it has a picture of somebody. I've even seen those in Taiwan, some places. But I know in America, you'll often see them in yoju, post offices. They'll have a bulletin board, and they'll have these, usually the FBI, they'll have a wanted poster, people who are wanted for these crimes, or they're suspects in a crime. Okay, so it says wanted in Monday shootings before correctly identifying the wanted man. Okay, here we have the wanted man. It means someone who's wanted or suspected. They want to arrest him, basically. Okay, so let's read this. The complaints came after the Tainan City Police Department identified 2 possible suspects. Both surnamed Chen, wanted in Monday's shootings. Before correctly identifying the wanted man as Lin Xinwu. Okay, so here it says, despite the correction, people online quickly located personal information about one of the people earlier named by police. Okay, so people online, of course, that means they were searching online, quickly located the personal information about one of the people. Okay, so let's read this. Despite the correction, people online quickly located personal information about one of the people earlier named by police. Right, okay. So again, here named can be used as a 动词. To name somebody means to give out their name, okay, to provide their name. Of course, here, despite the correction, sometimes in my magazine, COMPASS magazine, we have to print a correction, right? Maybe we got the price wrong, or maybe the address was wrong, or the telephone number was wrong. The worst is when the telephone number is wrong, because that means they're calling somebody else, right? That's terrible. I hate that when it happens. So we have to print a correction and an apology usually. Okay, so it says here, the NCC said that it received complaints saying that some TV stations should not have blurred the face of the suspect to help police in their nationwide search for Lin. Okay, so it's, again, I find this an interesting story. So they received complaints saying they should not have blurred the face of the suspects to help people find them. Of course, if their face is blurred, you don't know what they look like, right? Okay, so let's read this. The NCC said that it received complaints saying that some TV stations should not have blurred the face. Okay, let's say blurred the face of the suspect to help the police in their nationwide search for Lin. Let's say this word again, nationwide. What would be a simple word for nationwide? We simply said, well, very similar to this word, national, right? National. We could say national or nationwide. You know, we could say countrywide, nationwide, citywide. So when we add that word wide, it means across the whole place, across the whole city, across the whole country. So a nationwide search for this guy. They were looking for him all across the nation, or we could say national search for Lin. Okay. One complaint said that TV stations should always blur out a suspect's face to maintain the secrecy of a criminal investigation and protect the right of suspects, it said. Okay. I would probably say to protect the rights, with an S. But here they say the right of suspects. I don't know. I guess if it's one right, but I think this would be more than one right. So there's rights, okay, of suspects. Okay. So, yeah. So they're saying they should always blur out. Kind of interesting because I thought they were complaining that it was blurred out. Anyhow, so I guess there's two different opinions here. Okay. So let's read this. One complaint said that TV stations should always blur out a suspect's face to maintain the secrecy of a criminal investigation. Let's say it again. Criminal investigation and protect the right of suspects, it said. Okay. What is I think it's pretty obvious, but what does secrecy mean? Yeah, it just means, secrecy, of course, means it's a noun. It means the privacy or he said a longer word, confidentiality, which is a very long word, but basically means, to provide, to keep the secret. So we say, I want to keep the secrecy, or you must keep, you must promise me that you will keep the secrecy of this plan or this project or whatever. So we often say to maintain or protect the secrecy of something. Okay, let's say it again. Secrecy. Secrecy. Okay. Of course, with a criminal investigation, you don't always tell people everything. Otherwise, that might help the criminals. Okay. Okay. Let's read one more long paragraph here, and then we'll go to a different story. It says, the news ethics guidelines of the Satellite Television Broadcasting Association, whose members include all major television channels in Taiwan, state that broadcast news stations must consider the rights of suspects when interviewing, reporting, and commenting on them based on the presumption of innocence, and ensure that viewers are aware of that, said Chen Jingxuan, a senior specialist at the Department of Broadcasting and Content. Okay. So it's content. What does content mean? Yeah, 内容, right? But when you see that word, remember again, here's another word we pronounce differently. If we say content, what does that mean? Satisfied, 满意, right? I feel very content right now. But if you say this is very good content, then it means 内容. Okay? So why don't we say this way? 内容, content. Content. And then let's say it as 满意, like satisfied. Content. Content. Right. I am feeling very content. Okay. So yeah. Okay. So here it says, now this is an association, the news ethics guidelines. Now I think you know the word ethics, but what is ethics? What does that mean? Yeah. So if we say something is ethical, ethical, we talk about ethical behavior or ethical actions. Basically, it means to do the right thing, to do what is good, to do what is right, what is proper, okay? So if you say someone is a very ethical person, it means they always try to do what is right. Now, what's the opposite? To use that word, what is the opposite of ethical? Unethical. So we add a UN, unethical. We say that is wrong, that is unethical. You should not do that, okay? That is very unethical behavior, okay? So this is a very common word. If it's right, it's good, it's ethical. Why don't we say ethics? Ethics. So ethics is just that idea of what is right or wrong, good and bad, ethics. Okay, ethical. Ethical. Unethical. Unethical. So of course with news, 新闻, we have news ethics. It means what can we do or what should we not do? News ethics guidelines, 限制, guidelines, rule. Well, they're not really rules, but guidelines. Usually when when we say guideline, it means it's something that we should follow, but maybe it's not actually an official law. It's simply saying this is what we should do. So why don't we say together, guidelines. Guidelines. Okay, of the satellite, of course, satellite is 卫星, Television Broadcasting Association, whose members, okay, they include all the major TV channels in Taiwan, state that these guidelines say that broadcast news stations must consider the rights of suspects when what? When they interview them, 采访, report, report on them or comment on them based on, now this is a very common expression, the presumption of innocence. Now, what does innocence mean? Not guilty. Now, of course, innocence, if someone's very innocent, it could also mean they're very naive, or they don't understand the real world, or but here, of course, it means you're not guilty. So when we say presumption of innocence, what does that mean? Yeah, the word presumption comes from what? To presume, right? So if we say there we go. To presume, okay, I presume, it's a little bit like it means I will already believe or assume something. I think that it means I will accept that person is innocent unless he is proven guilty. So there's actually a expression that's similar that we say innocent. This is something we say a lot. Innocent until proven, yes, guilty. So this is a basic concept, right? A basic 主义, a principle. Innocent until proven guilty. It means that if you're not proven guilty, then you are still innocent, right? And no one can say you're guilty until you've been proven guilty. Okay, so we see this in many places, right? And that's, of course, with the media, it's very important, because if someone is captured by the police and everybody's like, oh, that guy is guilty, but maybe he's not guilty. Who knows? Okay, so we say to presume someone is innocent until proven guilty. So presumption of innocence means we presume they're innocent. So why don't we say together, to presume. To presume. Presumption of innocence. Presumption of innocence. Innocent until proven guilty. Let's say it one more time. Innocent until proven guilty. Right. Okay. So presumption of innocence and ensure that viewers are aware of that. So they have to make sure that viewers understand that. Just because this guy is on TV or just because the police arrested him does not mean he's already guilty. That's what they mean. Yeah. Okay, so let's read this and then we'll go to a different story. The news ethics guidelines of the Satellite Television Broadcasting Association whose members include all major television channels in Taiwan, state that broadcast news stations must consider the rights of suspects when interviewing, reporting, and commenting on them based on the presumption of innocence. And ensure that viewers are aware of that. Said Chen Jingxuan, a senior specialist at the Department of Broadcasting and Content. Let's say it again, broadcasting. What does broadcasting mean? To air, what is it? 广播, right? Okay. We talk about a broadcast station or broadcasting station. You can say this TV broadcasts the news to everybody. It means to send out. You can have a broadcast, can be a radio station. It could be a TV station. Usually that's the words, the two settings we use for that. Yeah. Okay. Any questions? I find this story interesting because in the United States, we do not blur the faces of suspects. So, if the police arrest somebody, you can see them, right? If they're wanted by the police, they'll put their photo on the TV, say this person is wanted or this person is a suspect in this crime. And probably they put their face there so that people can identify them, right? But the other thing I find very interesting is that this is not covered here, not mentioned here, but in Taiwan, have you noticed, I'm sure you have, suspects are, when the police arrest them and they bring them out, they always have a motorcycle helmet on, right? Like an 全帽, right? And you cannot see their face. They're wearing a mask, they have a motorcycle helmet on, and the police bring them out. But in the US, of course, they don't. They always bring them out and everybody can see them and take their picture. Of course, we still have in America, we have the presumption of innocence, but we feel like, well, this person is a suspect and they were arrested. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of an interesting thing. I can see the benefit or the plus and the negative side, the good side and the bad side for these kinds of restrictions. Obviously, if you're arrested and everybody sees you on TV and then maybe you're innocent, that could damage your reputation. That could hurt your, people like, oh, well, I saw that guy on TV, even though he's innocent. So I don't know. It's a difficult question. Interesting issue, topic. Yeah. Okay. I'll teach you a little expression. Jija, and everybody talks about it. If you are arrested in America and the police bring you out, and it's kind of just an expression, but people call it all right. The what? No, the fifth. Oops. We call it the walk of shame. because you're walking, right, in front of everybody and people can see you, and shame, you know what shame means, right? How do you say shame in Chinese? Yeah. So we say the walk of shame, because, yeah, it's like when suspects are out there and everyone can see them. Yeah. Maybe it's similar, right? Walk of fame, walk of shame. Okay. Obviously, those are the opposite. Yeah. Okay. Whenever I see this phrase, I think of a funny scene from a movie I saw. Maybe you've seen the movie, a couple years ago. Have you seen the movie Crazy Rich Asians? Okay, you've seen that movie? She has one of her best friends in Singapore, right? And when they go to her fiance's house, her friend opens her car trunk and she's all these dresses in the back of her car. And her friend's like, "What? You carry these dresses around with you?" And they all have labels on them. One says parties, one says and then one of the dresses says walk of shame. So I guess if she gets arrested by the police, she puts on that dress. And then the other one's for party. And so she has all these different dresses in her car. She keeps them in her car, which is kind of funny. Yeah. Okay, so let's go on to, I think we have time to look at maybe one more story. Let's see here. I saw another one here that was kind of interesting. Where are we? Okay. Yeah, sorry to keep using the COVID-19 as an article, but thought this one was interesting and useful. Sometimes when I pick these stories, I'm looking for good vocabulary words. So let's go and see what this one has. It's interesting. I still meet people, not many, but I still meet people who tell me they have not been vaccinated at all. And it's their choice. I mean, obviously, if they don't want to get vaccinated, but I'm always surprised by it, because it seems like most people I know have gotten vaccinated. Of course, it's a sensitive issue for children. I know some people don't want to vaccinate their children because they don't trust the vaccination. I mean, again, that's their personal choice. Okay, so here it says medical experts urge vaccination awareness, right? So when we talk about awareness, we can talk about many kinds of awareness. You have awareness about crime or crime prevention or environmental awareness. You know, we often talk about environment, 环保 or 环境. Your environmental awareness means you're kind of aware of how to protect your environment. So to be aware of something usually means you have good knowledge of something. You pay attention to it. You 注意, you think about it. So why don't we say together awareness? Awareness. Okay, like even good driving awareness. Like as a driver, you should be aware of what's around you, right? You shouldn't be looking at your smartphone or something like that. You should be aware of what's around you. So we talk about good driving awareness. Okay, so it says here, although people are becoming aware of the importance of getting vaccinated against COVID-19, other vaccinations are effective for preventing many infectious diseases and should not be neglected. National Taiwan Children's Hospital Superintendent Huang Liming said yesterday. So this is interesting. It's not talking about COVID. It's talking about other things. So it says here, other vaccinations are effective. Of course, if something's effective, it means 有效果, right? It's effective. So effective in preventing many infectious diseases. Of course, what's an infectious disease? It's a disease that you can get infected with, right? I don't know, to me, most diseases seem infectious. Although, what would be, if it's not infectious, how could you get a disease? You could get a disease through what? Well, it could be, have you know the word hereditary? Hereditary means what? Right. Right. So if something is hereditary, right, or your genes, maybe not your parents. That could be just in your genes. But if you think about the word hereditary, you can see the similarity to inherit, right? Right? And then here's the word heir, right? Heir, whoops, that's an I. Heir. There's some similarities here between these words. What's an heir? Right. So if your parents give you their house or they give you their money, you are their heir. Now, of course, we don't pronounce this word, sir. We don't pronounce the word with a H. It's like air, like Kong Chi, right? A-I-R. It's pronounced the same way. H-E-I-R is pronounced heir. So he just used the word expression heir to the throne. So a king or a queen, like okay, I'll ask you test your knowledge. Who is heir to the British throne right now? Right now, we have Queen Elizabeth, right? Who is heir to her throne? Charles, right? Now, Charles has been waiting forever, right? I mean, he's been waiting a long time. I mean, he's getting pretty old, but he's still the heir to the throne. I think people automatically think William, right? But William is actually the second in line to the throne. So yeah, Charles is probably thinking, when am I going to be king? Is this ever going to happen? So why don't we say together, heir, right? So yeah, we say he is the heir, and most of us are heirs in some way. I mean, maybe we don't get much money or property or much, but we're still kind of technically we're the heir, our parents' heir if they give us something. Actually, I'll teach you another word that's kind of interesting. I know we've never talked about this word. It's a very specific word. Heirloom. Do you know what an heirloom is? An heirloom is an object, a thing that your parents give to you. They basically give it to you because you're their child. Usually, we often talk about a family. We say family heirloom. So I don't know. I don't know. Some of you probably have family heirlooms. It's maybe something your great grandparents gave to your grandparents, gave to your parents, and they now give it to you. Now, it doesn't have to come through many generations, but it could, right? I'm trying to think if my family has any heirlooms. Oh, that's a good question. It could be anything. It could be a watch. A what? It could a car. It could be a car. It could be a piece of furniture like a chair or a table. But it's something that the family has passed down through generations. Now, of course, it might be a new heirloom, so maybe it's only your parents gave it to you, and maybe they hope you'll give it to your children. But we call it a family heirloom. So why don't we say together, heirloom? That's one word, heirloom. Family heirloom. Right. And then, of course, from that, related to that, we have the word inherit. Inherit. Right. So we could say he inherited the family heirloom, this family heirloom from his parents. Okay, so you inherit something, means they give it to you because they're your parents, you're their child. So we inherit, most commonly we inherit money or a house or something from our family or our parents. Okay, so we inherit something from them. Okay, so we inherit it from our parents or grandparents. But here's the word I originally wanted to write down is hereditary means related to your family. It's something that's passed through your family. So we talk about hereditary diseases. It could be a disease that comes down through your family, through your genetics, your genes, Genes. Now, it might not be your parents. You might have gotten it from your grandparents, right? Like cancer, 癌症 is considered sometimes, not always, but sometimes it's considered a hereditary disease. Not all cancers, of course, are caused by your genes, but they could be. There could be something hereditary. Well, I guess many diseases, even like heart disease, you could say some people think it's hereditary. Like maybe we say, and I'll say there's an expression. We say this disease runs in your family. Run, like Pao, runs, R-U-N-S. You could say heart disease runs in my family, or this kind of cancer runs in my family. Okay, that means in my family, this is a very common, it's probably a hereditary disease. Okay, so why don't we say this together? Hereditary. Hereditary. And this word is very broad. We can use it for many different things. We could say a hereditary title, like I get this title because my father had this title, or this house is hereditary. Anything that you inherit, okay, hereditary. So yeah, these words, they're all very similar to each other. Any questions on that? Yeah. Yeah, that's a funny one. I technically, it may be that this word can be pronounced either way, but I usually say herbal. And just like I would say an herb. What's an herb? H-E-R-B. Herb is like what is it? 香料, 药草. Okay, so I say herb. I go out, I put lots of herbs with an E-R-B, herb. But a lot of people, they read and they say herb. I don't know. That's, again, I think probably my guess is, I need to go Google it, but my guess is that probably both pronunciations are okay. But I would say that probably the more proper pronunciation, or the original pronunciation, is with no H. We say herb, herbal, yeah. So herbal treatments, herbal tea. Like you can do this, 药草, this tea. So why don't we say together herb, herbal. Yeah, so good question. Okay, so let's go back to this. It says, preventing many infectious diseases and should not be neglected. What's neglected? If you neglect something, what does that mean? You ignore it. You don't take care of it. Now, sometimes, unfortunately, parents will neglect their children, right? They won't pay attention to their children, or they don't care for their children. You can neglect your pet, right? Your cat or your dog. You don't take care of it. You don't take it out for a walk. You can neglect your responsibility, right? You have a 责任, and you don't fulfill that. You don't do it. You say he is neglecting his responsibility or his duty. Okay? So why don't we say together, neglected? Neglected. People often say they feel neglected. I feel neglected. Nobody's caring for me. Nobody's taking care of me, or nobody's paying attention to me. Okay, so let's read this together. Although people are becoming aware of the importance of getting vaccinated against COVID-19, other vaccinations are effective for preventing many infectious diseases and should not be neglected. Neglected. National Taiwan University Children's Hospital Superintendent Huang Liming said yesterday. You know what a superintendent is, right? It could be like a 主任 or a, 院长. Yeah, for a hospital, of course, we would say 院长, but a superintendent could be anything, right? You could be the superintendent of your team, or of the field, or anything that you're in charge of. We say, oh, he's the superintendent, he's in charge of something. Usually it's an official title, but it's very broad. It can be used in many different ways or many different places. Let's say it one more time, superintendent. Right. Okay. So it says here, Huang, who is honorary chairman of the Infectious Diseases Society of Taiwan, was speaking about vaccinations for adults at an event held by the British Chamber of Commerce in Taipei and supported by British drug maker GlaxoSmithKline's Taiwan branch. I'm sure that GSK wants people to be more aware because, of course, that means they can sell more medicine to people. But I'm just saying this is important, of course. Now, this is a very interesting thing. Do you know what an honorary chairman is? What honorary title? Yeah. So sometimes you hear about people who they're honorary, like a doctor or honorary professor or honorary. It means they don't actually have that title. It's not a real title that they've earned, but the university or somebody will give that title to them to honor them because maybe they've done lots of great things or they've achieved a lot of things. And so the school, often schools will do this. A university will give somebody an honorary title. It means to honor them with the title. It's not a title they've earned, or it's not a title they officially have, but we say it's honorary. So why don't we say together, honorary? Honorary. Actually, it's funny here. Here's another word where we do not pronounce the H, right? We talked about herbal, air, honorary. We don't say honorary, we say honorary. Okay, so one more time, honorary. Honorary. Okay, so he's the honorary chairman of this society, this association. Okay. Of course, when we say society, it's like another word for association. That's kind of what it means. Okay. Okay, so let's read this. Huang, who is honorary chairman of the Infectious Diseases Society of Taiwan, was speaking about vaccinations for adults at an event held by the British Chamber of Commerce in Taipei and supported by British drug maker GlaxoSmithKline's Taiwan branch. Okay. Let's see here. Okay. So it says here, British Chamber of Commerce Chief Executive Officer, or we could say CEO, Richard Stokes Greens, said that during the COVID-19 pandemic, many people and businesses have recognized that healthcare and workforce well-being is of paramount importance. Now, here's a good word. What does paramount mean? Yeah, it's another word saying, you said what? Oh, means, yeah, top. Yeah, what do we say? 平等, or number one. Yeah, the most, basically. It's not a word we use every day, but if we say, often we use it with the word importance. This is of paramount importance, okay? It means at the maximum, the most, the top, okay? So why don't we say it together, paramount. Paramount. Okay, so healthcare and workforce well-being. Now, of course, workforce means what? It's kind of like what? Yeah, our employees. Like we can say this company has a very large workforce. It's almost like saying your personnel, I guess you could say your 人才, the people who work for you. So we say the workforce of Taiwan is aging. It's getting older, or it's shrinking. It's getting smaller. Okay, so it's a very broad word. Why don't we say together, workforce? Workforce. So, of course, here we're talking about workforce well-being. Of course, means good health, everything like that. That's important. Okay. Okay, so let's read this together. British Chamber of Commerce, Chief Executive Officer, Richard Stokes Green, said that during the COVID pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, many people and businesses have recognized that healthcare and workforce well-being is of paramount importance. Let's say it again, paramount importance. Okay, so again, the word well-being is a 名词, and it's been turned, we add a dash, and we say the well-being. You can say, I care about the well-being of children, or the children, I care about the well-being of my family. Means it becomes a noun, a 名词. Okay? That's a photo caption. Okay, it says, however, immunization should not just be a crisis management issue, but needs to become a core component of operational and human resources planning to ensure productivity, employee well-being, and the well-being of the community, Stoke Green said. So they're using this word well-being a lot. Here we have employee well-being and the well-being of the community. Okay, so yeah. What's another word that's very, very similar to well-being? Welfare, yes. It sounds very similar. We can say the welfare of the community, the welfare of my family. So it's very similar to the word well-being. We could use the two words either way. The welfare. Why don't we say together welfare? Welfare. Okay. What is another word for component? Part. Yeah, piece. A part. So sometimes when you buy, like if you go to IKEA, you always have to put your furniture together. You have to assemble it, right? You have to put it together, and there's many components, right? Maybe you have to put the legs on, and then the top, and then so we say there are many components to this. Or we could say there are many parts to this plan, right? 我的计划. So we could say there are many components to my plan. There are many parts to my plan. So why don't we say together component? Component. Okay, so this immunization, of course, you know what that means, right? It's like vaccination. It's like 疫苗, right? So immunity is like 抗体, right? If we say I have immunity against COVID-19, IMMUNITY, immunity is 抗体, right? I have immunity against whatever, a cold or COVID-19 or the flu. Okay, so why don't we say that first word, immunity. Immunity. And then this word, immunization. Immunization. Okay, so immunization means to do something that gives you immunity, which usually means to get a shot. Although I guess there's some other ways we could immunize ourselves. So immunization should not be crisis management issue. Of course, crisis management means to control or manage a crisis, a problem. So he's saying we should not just react or respond to crisis, but it needs to be a core. Core means central, right? A core component. So we could say a central part or a core component of operational and human resource. Human resource is very much 人才, right? Human resources. You can say we have great human resources, 人才. Human resources planning to ensure, what would be another word for ensure? To make sure, or what else? We could say to guarantee, 保证, to ensure productivity, okay, employee well-being, and then well-being of the community. So, okay, let's read this, and then I think we're out of time. However, immunization should not be a crisis management issue. Let's say it one more time. Crisis management issue. But needs to become a core component of Operational and human resources planning. To ensure productivity, employee well-being, and the well-being of the community. Stokes Green said. Right. So yeah, basically that means don't just get your COVID-19 shots or vaccinations, but make sure you're getting your other vaccinations as well. It's funny though, when I was a kid, I felt like we were always getting vaccinations, but nowadays I don't feel like there's as many vaccinations as there used to be. I don't know why. I think there are some diseases that were more common in Taiwan long time ago that are not very common anymore. Of course, there's one that's gone, like smallpox. You know smallpox, right? How do you say smallpox in Chinese? Yeah, it's small, SMLALLPOX, one word, smallpox. It's gone. It's eliminated. It's no longer here. But yeah, I know in Taiwan, for some reason, people would get smallpox vaccinations. It would always leave a scar on their arm. It was very unique. Even that's different. Yeah, that's monkeypox. But it's very funny. Even in the U.S., I had friends from Taiwan, and they would see that scar, and they're like, "Oh, you're from Taiwan. You got that vaccine." It was very weird. That vaccine in Taiwan, whatever they were using in Taiwan, always left a scar on your arm, and people would see that and were like, "Oh, you must come from Taiwan." So yeah. Okay, good. Well, that's all we have time for today. But stay safe. Enjoy the hot weather, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
各位同学大家好，我叫 Johnny。那我跟班上有几个同学，我们有开一个 LINE 的群组，我们会把今天的上课笔记放在这个群组里面。那我们也会另外办一个英文的读书会，可以跟大家一起找一篇新闻，然后练习英文的口说。那有兴趣可以一起来，想要练习英文的人可以一起来找我这样子。谢谢大家。